So they called him the Amtrak, an amazing, talented rider, a phenomenal personality in our sport, and want an honor tonight to introduce the video bringing Charles Townsend into the National BMX Hall of Fame. Let's roll the video.
That one defining moment. It was a cold Thanksgiving weekend in 1987, and rookie pro Charles Townsend came to Oklahoma City seated number 2 in points, 277 points behind Pistol Pete. With Long Karavich still recovering from an injury, Charlie saw a chink in Pete's muscular armor. Donning his CW factory gear, Townsend would kick things off with a confidence-boosting Friday night win at the Honda Super Cup, along with the keys to a Honda CR250. The next day, Townsend shocked the BMX world by showing up for his first moto in a RevCore uniform, a new high-end line of bikes and parts from CW. Once the pistol went out in the quarters, Chuck's destiny was in his own hands. He made it to the final, where he put up a valiant battle against the Lumberjack. With a 2-2-4 finish in his 3 mains, Charlie's second place overall was more than enough to secure the ABA's #1 pro championship. In all of BMX history, there have only been 4 riders to ever win a #1 pro plate in their rookie year, and Chuck was the second to do so. After an illustrious 15-year pro career, Northern California's Amtrak tallied up 32 wins, made 297 main events, and stood on 138 podiums, giving him a career average ranking of number 8. Stand up, put your hands together, and welcome your 2014 Hall of Fame inductee, racer Charles Townsend.
Wow. Wow. Hi, Deanna. Got a lot to say, didn't write anything down because all my friends were saying, oh, you're going to do a speech, you're going to do a speech. And I started to think about it, and I tried to write some things down, and it didn't work out so well. So I'm going to kind of wing it. If I get a little bit all over the place, just bear with the stories. First of all, some house cleaning. Would like to thank the ABA for the event that they've put on. Well, I guess it's USA Cycling now. Bernie Anderson, BAA, Clayton, all you guys. Towards the end, I think, especially Clayton for the help towards the tail end of my career. I won't go into particulars, but I do appreciate everything that you guys did for me. But to put any conspiracy theories out the window, I didn't end up with a whole bunch of extra points at the end of the year in lane 8 at Rockford, okay? I do need Jennifer Morris. We all know who Jennifer Morris is, right? Where's she at? Our head scorer over there. I apologize for the times I've come across the finish line in any other place but first, and have some choice words to say. Not necessarily at her, but she got it. And so I apologize for all that, but we really know, Jennifer, that I got first place all those times, right? I was just a BMX kid that grew up in a rough part of town. Hey, and this timer up here does work, so. I grew up in a rough part of town, and the only thing I ever wanted to do was just ride my bike as fast as I could and be the best that I could be. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would be here tonight. So in case some of you don't know what I do now, I sell cars. So how in the hell can I be at a dealership and tell people you got to give me all this money, but I can't stand out in front of you and speak my mind? But I was just growing up, and all I wanted to do was try to ride my bike as best as I could. And I'm humbled to be here because Eddie King, Greg Hill, Harry Larry, Tommy Brackens were all guys that I had pictures of up on my wall. And I was telling somebody that, first of all, to be a professional athlete in any sport, your window of opportunity is about this much. Within that window of opportunity, no matter how hard you train, no matter how hard you work out, you're going to get a little bit better, but you're always going to be within that window of opportunity. So for me to be able to fit in that window of opportunity, and growing up as a kid, I got in a little bit of trouble for most part, but being able to fit in that window of opportunity and staying out of the trouble that I got into, and to be in front of the people that I've looked up to in the past and be part of this elite group is very humbling. I want to thank, there's a gentleman in the crowd this afternoon or this evening named Chris Hall. If it was for not Chris Hall and his parents dragging me around to the local races every weekend, I wouldn't be here today. My mom was a lady that was a little bit on the older side, so some of you that know my mom know that she couldn't get out to the races and sit out there all afternoon under the sun or anything like that, so I would always tag along with Chris. It got to the point to where some people thought Chris's parents were my parents. And when I heard that, I'm like, wow, do they not see the... So if it was not for them, I wouldn't be here today. So I thank Chris for that. If you're out there, my hat's off to you and much appreciated. My very first early stages of my career, I was fortunate enough to ride on a couple bike shops that were pretty competitive, landed a role at Boss Racing for a couple years, and then moved on to free agent with Yvonne Shoup. Then after that, I kind of moved on to the CW stage, and that's where I met the Donnells. And the Donnell family took me in. They were my second home in Southern California, and I can't thank them more than enough. And I love them to death. We were in Memphis one time, and 19-year-old kid, Mr. Donnell, Mrs. Carter was standing there, Eric Carter's mom, and, we're in Memphis. 19-year-old kid in a rental car. Come on, BMXers, what are you guys going to do? Right? So Mr. Donnell proceeds to tell me, goes, hey, Charles, why don't you go get the rental car? We're going to wait right over here and, got all the bags. I'm like, okay. So I take off and I go get the rental car, and all of a sudden I come around the building doing an e-brake. And as I starting to straighten out, I look up, and Mr. Donnell and Mrs. Carter standing there with two of Memphis' finest. So I pull up, roll the window down, get out of the car, and Mike's just looking at me, just kind of shaking his head a little bit. Mrs. Carter's standing there. Gentleman officer asked me, he says, what's your name? I said, Charles. Yeah. He goes, having a good time in my parking lot? Well, yeah. Well, where are you from? California. Looks at me and says, boy, you in Memphis now. So I look up at him and I say, yes, sir, and what a fine city it is. Growing up as a kid, living in a rough part of town, emulating the pros that are here tonight, Eddie King, Greg Hill, Harry Leary, like I said, all I want to do is just try to ride a bike as best as I could and be the fastest that I could be. And on the weekends, I'd get together with 5 or 6 kids, and we would emulate, of who the pros that we wanted to be. So there was this kid that was just really good, and we'd do hot laps in a parking lot. He was great, phenomenal rider. So really intense, always kind of angry about life. So we nominated him to be Greg Hill. I guess he must have read that interview where he concentrated on a penny for 2 hours. So and then the other kid, who was short and a little thin in hair, we dubbed him to be Harry Leary. And then there was always this one kid that was always stylish and could do a cross-up like nobody else, a tabletop, but he always finished in the back of the pack. So he was Mike Miranda. And then it got to me, and, I was good with the straightaway speed and all that stuff. So as you can see my resemblance, they had me be Tommy Brackens. But And the only reason why I mentioned some of those guys is because I had the utmost respect for them. And again, growing up as a kid, seeing these guys and becoming a part of that group is just, I'm humbled to be here. I've had a very great, illustrious career. I would not have been here for any, I thank the Carters for being there, Joanne Carter, Eric Carter, Papa Carter, Bill Nelson, who was another phenomenal team manager. For those of you who don't know, he was team manager at GT, and my hat's off to Bill because, come on, guys, people, if you guys had a 12-year-old kid, would you let him travel the world with no parent supervision? And Bill Nelson was able to keep everything under control between not only the pros, but the amateurs. And what I love about Bill, because at that point in time, there was 4 pros on the team, and Bill was able to not only encourage his son to do the best that he could, but if I had a question or Gary Ellis had a question, he would give us his truly unbiased opinion. And I love Bill for that. Had some great friends with GT Bicycles, TC, Big E. We're just sitting here talking tonight. Those of you that have traveled and know what the circuit is like, what the national circuit is like, they become your family. I've probably spent more time with them than anybody else. And, Danny Nelson, we've had trips to Europe. There was a time where we got invited to an invitational race, and it was just Danny and I, and we were in France, and funny story, we walk into this restaurant, and I'm in the mood for steak, and order a steak, and I said, medium well, and it was always coming back like rare. So I'm like, okay, So a couple nights later, we go out again, and go to order steak again, want it well, and it comes back kind of like rare again. So I don't know if Danny remembers this, but about the 4th night we were there, I ordered steak again, and I tell the waiter, I said, medium well. He goes, oh, yeah, oui, I understand. I said, no, I don't think you understand. I said, I want my steak like this, not like this. So, those are just, those are just the PG stories that I can tell. I'm just humbled. I have friends of mine that will tell me, this and that and whatnot. When I listen to the stats, for me, the stats weren't important. What was important for me was to try to go out and do the best that I could, be the best that I could be, and everything else fell into place. The sponsorship, the income, the titles. The number one thing for me was because of the love of the sport. I remember when I first turned pro, I was racing against the guys that I idolized, the guys that were hanging on my walls, and I started doing well, and my mom would say, well, wow, because by this time my mom got caught up to speed and kind of figured out who was who. And I call her and I tell her how I did, and first thing she would ask would be like when Tommy was towards the tail end of his career, well, how'd Tommy do? Well, I don't care about Tommy. What about me? Or how'd Gary do? So I would start to tell her, well, I won this weekend, and she said, well, how'd Greg do? I'm like, well, I won this weekend. She goes, well, how did you do it? How did you beat Greg? Or how did you do this or do that? And I said, well, I got a good gate, cut him off, and I ran him over the berm. She goes, Charles, you can't do that. I'm like, well. So a little bit of time went on, and I started winning some more races and call home. Well, how did you do? Oh, I won again. Well, how'd you do that? Well, got a good start, cut him off, ran him over a berm, and I won. So I remember when I started kind of not losing my momentum, but you kind of get on a roll a little bit. And then all of a sudden I call home. My mom said, well, how'd you do? And I go, well, I got 2nd or 3rd or something like that. She goes, well, you should have just cut him off or rode him over the turfs. I can go on and on and on about all the stories and the things that I've seen and done. And I tell all of my friends this and all of the people that I've met that if it wasn't for the sport of BMX, I would have not have met any of the people or half the people that I know. I wouldn't have traveled to the places that I've been to. I wouldn't have been bitten by those big old mosquitoes in Michigan during the summertime at Deanna Edwards' house. So I'm very, very thankful for the sport of BMX and what it has offered to me because I'm just humbled. And Mr. Nelson and I were talking one day, and he said that, being a pro in this sport, late 80s, 90s, and whatnot, we were kind of rock stars a little bit. I mean, the only thing we had to worry about was getting to the airport on time and making sure we got a good start. And I look back now that I'm older and I'd like to say wiser, but just deal with everyday headaches, and I think, man, you know, when I was about 25, 26, the only thing I had to worry about is how I was going to get a good gate, or who I was going to cut off, or, you know, making sure Billy Griggs wasn't going to get a better start than me because we all knew his elbows were like this. But I was very, very fortunate, and I'm very humbled to stand in front of everybody here tonight, and I think that I'm just thankful, and I appreciate everybody that voted for me, and thanks again, and I'll leave it at that.